So what we're going to do today is mole conversion problems, and I've given you a couple graphics at the top. One is going to show you conversion factors, and the other one is how to use the tic-tac-toe board. So we're going to first do number one, and the directions for number one is to determine the mass in grams of 2 moles of nitrogen. So there's a few things we have to talk about. One, if we do a road map, it tells you what unit we're going to go to and from. So if we say we're going to start in moles, we're then going to end up in grams. This gives you an idea of what your ending unit should be. The other thing we have to talk about is a concept called molar mass. Molar mass is simply the atomic masses of all the elements in a compound. In this case, all we have is 1 mole of nitrogen. So 1 mole of nitrogen is equal to the atomic mass of nitrogen. So what I'm going to do is use my periodic table, find nitrogen, and find that the molar mass of nitrogen is 14.01 grams per 1 mole. So this right here came from the periodic table. But you can see it says up here in your little chart that the molar mass is equal to the atomic mass found on the periodic table. That is actually going to be the conversion we're going to use in this problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to use factor label method, which looks like a tic-tac-toe board. You can see some examples up in the top right corner. We're going to start with what we're given. And what we're given is 2 moles of nitrogen. I'm going to make my tic-tac-toe board. You do not need anything in this bottom corner. If you wanted to add a 1, you could, but you can just leave it blank. The other principle we're going to use is the principle of a reciprocal. So if I have the fraction 1/2 and I wanted to simplify it or make it equal to 1, what I would do is multiply it by its reciprocal or the opposite. So there you see the 2's are in opposite corners, which means you can cross them out. Same principle applies here. In order to get rid of this mole, what I'm going to do is put it in the opposite corner, and now I can simply cross that unit out, and it is now gone. Now that unit is no longer being used. If I look at my road map and I've taken care of the mole, the only other unit available to put at the top is a gram. So you're going to do your units first. Next, your conversion factor is right here. So you're going to match the number with the unit. So I see the number 14.01 is with a gram, and 1 is with a mole. So now my problem's all set up. The last thing you do is math. If you see here they're next to each other, like in this problem, you're actually going to multiply. So I'm going to take 2 and multiply by 14.01, and I'm going to get 28.02 grams. Now I know my final unit is grams in a couple ways. 1, it says it in the problem right here. 2 is that if you look, a G for gram is the only unit not crossed out in your tic-tac-toe board. So that was going from moles to grams. Now we're going to look at a different problem. One thing I do want to talk about real quick before we go to another problem is this concept of the molar mass of NaCl. NaCl is a compound. So if you want to find the molar mass in a compound, it is the same as using the atomic masses, but here you're going to add together the atomic masses of both. So what I'm going to do is separate this into the compounds that exist, which is sodium Na and chlorine Cl. I'm going to look up their individual atomic masses on the periodic table. I'm going to find sodium is 22.99 and chlorine is 35.45. And to get the total molar mass of both compounds, I'm very simply going to add them together. So we can round that number, and that number you're going to get is about 58.45. So the molar mass of NaCl, you can see here, you just add the molar masses of each component element. And that's what you're going to do for each compound. Okay, now we're going to go the other way. So we just did moles to grams. Now we're going to say determine the amount of moles in this many grams. So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go grams to moles here. The same conversion factor is used. It is still how many moles in a molar mass. So 1 mole of magnesium, I just use my periodic table, 1 mole of magnesium is equal to the atomic mass of magnesium, which is 24.31 grams. There's my conversion factor. Tic-tac-toe board is always the same. Start with what you're given. So 12.15 grams of magnesium. Make your tic-tac-toe board. You're going to leave that bottom left-hand corner here blank. Now that grams is in the upper right, I need to put grams down here so that it cancels out. Grams is taken care of. The only other unit left is moles. Now I match my number with the unit. So I look up here at my conversion factor, and I see that 1 goes with mole and 24.31 goes with gram. It's very important that you match those numbers up correctly. Now here, since we have 12.15 over 24.31, the math I'm going to do here is division. So I'm going to divide 12.15 divided by 24.31, and I get 0.5 moles. Again, I know that's my unit based on the problem and based on the fact that moles is the only thing left uncanceled out. Now the bottom problem, number 9, is a slightly different conversion factor. So again, it's asking for the amount of moles, but this time it gives you atoms. So at this point, what we're trying to do is go from atoms to moles. The same principle applies with the tic-tac-toe board, but your conversion factor is now different. This conversion factor, 1 mole, equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. That's Avogadro's number. The difference between this one and the previous problems is that is always the conversion factor with atoms. It really doesn't matter that this is fluorine. You're not going to look up the molar mass of fluorine. You're always going to use 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. Even though these are two big numbers, the principles are still the same. I start with what I'm given, 1.5 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. I make my tic-tac-toe board. In order to cross out the unit atoms, it has to go in the opposite corner. Cross it out. The only other unit left now is a mole. And again, I'm going to match my number with the unit. So it's going to be 1 mole and 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. In order to solve this problem, I'm going to divide. Now, this can be tricky putting into your calculator, so I'm actually going to write on the board exactly what you should be plugging in. So you're going to do open parentheses, and then a 1.5. Now remember, you're going to go to the second and the button above the 7 that looks like a comma, and what should pop up is this, a capital letter E. This E stands for the times 10. So now the only thing you have to plug in is the 23 for the exponent. Close the parentheses. Then since we're dividing, you're going to do the divided sign on the calculator. Open parentheses again. Now you're going to put the 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. So you're going to do 6 decimal 02. Again, you're going to do second E, and now 23. Close the parentheses and hit enter. If you've entered that correctly, the answer you should get is 0.25 moles. Make sure you check your calculator. Make sure you've entered it correctly. It might be a good idea to do it 1 or 2 times to practice, and you should get the right answer.